Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Unbox Your Curiosity, the podcast where we explore tech, talent, and culture through the lens of what really matters today. I'm your host, Christiane Zhao. Today, we're diving into a topic that sits right at the intersection of AI, identity, and online trust. In this episode, we'll unpack the growing challenge of AI-powered deception and explore a potential solution known as personhood credentials, a concept designed to help us verify who's real online without compromising privacy. A quick note before we begin. Our guest today isn't a human, but an AI research assistant built using Google Gemini. It was trained on over 30 sources I collected on the topic of personhood credentials, including academic papers, websites, policy reports, and expert videos. The goal? To help us break down this complex subject in a way that's clear, balanced, and thought-provoking. Hello, Melissa. As artificial intelligence becomes more advanced, the line between human and machine is getting blurrier, and that's raising big questions about how we know who we're really interacting with online. What do you think about it?
You know that feeling? You're online, maybe scrolling through comments, talking to customer service, perhaps trying to buy something, peer to peer, and you just sort of pause. And this little voice pops up asking, wait, is this real? Am I actually talking to another human being right now?
Yeah, that feeling is definitely getting more common and maybe more accurate these days.
Right. Fake identities online, they aren't new. We've had bots, sock puppets, bad actors spreading disinformation or running scams forever. It's an old playbook.
But the game has completely changed. Artificial intelligence, AI, has stepped onto the field, and it's not just adding more fakes, it's making them incredibly sophisticated. At low costs, sometimes in only a few seconds, you can create a new identity.
And operating at a scale we've just never seen before, it's becoming genuinely hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Exactly, and that's really the problem we're diving into today. I pulled together a stack of sources for this one. I recently read a detailed paper proposing a potential solution, something called personhood credentials. And on top of that, we've also got insights from the European Banking Authority and Deloitte, looking at how this is already hitting the financial sector hard, plus other perspectives on digital identity and security in this new AI world.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack how AI is, weaponizing deception online, and then explore this idea of personhood credentials, a tool designed to help us figure out who is real online.
But, and this is the crucial part, doing it without necessarily making you give up all your privacy. I would say it is the ideal plan, but we would need to see how can we implement the solutions in real world.
Right. It's a fascinating challenge, isn't it? How do we build trust back into these online interactions when the fakes are getting so good, but also maintain that, essential space for anonymity that the internet also provides, finding that delicate balance.
That's the tightrope. Okay, so let's get into the heart of the problem. How exactly is AI turning up the dial on online deception?
The sources seem to point to two major ways it's doing this.
Yeah, the first one the paper talks about is increasing indistinguishability. Basically, AI is getting frighteningly good at mimicking human output.
Think about it, generating text that sounds perfectly natural, expressing nuanced opinions, sharing experiences that feel totally authentic.
And we see this everywhere, right? Fake reviews, forum comments, those really sophisticated phishing emails that look legit.
And it's not just text anymore, is it? The AI can create incredibly realistic visual and audio fakes, deep fakes, voice clones.
Exactly. This is where you hear these. Frankly, terrifying stories like the one mentioned in the sources about the voice cloning scam targeting a Ferrari executive.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
An audio deepfake mimicking the CEO's voice, even his specific southern Italian accent. Almost convinced someone to transfer millions.
Wow. How was it caught?
Well, apparently the recipient just happened to ask a personal question, and the AI couldn't answer.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it is almost pure luck.
That's chilling. And the sources back this up, right? It's not just anecdotes.
No, not at all. A survey found 60%. 60% of anti-fraud professionals in finance reported seeing fraudsters using voice cloning.
60%.
That is not it. And over 10% of companies surveyed have already faced deep fake fraud attempts. These aren't hypothetical threats anymore. They're happening right now.
Okay, so AI makes the fakes look and sound incredibly real. That's indistinguishability. What's the other big trend?
It's the scalability. This is where AI really kind of breaks the traditional defenses. It makes creating and operating these fake identities much cheaper and way easier to access.
Even for bad actors who aren't, like, coding geniuses, because of things like open weights models being available.
Exactly, so instead of needing a huge team manually running, say dozens of fake accounts, guess what now?
You could have just a few individuals using AI to manage thousands, maybe millions of simultaneous deceptive activities.
Precisely. The paper points out that AI agents are evolving. They're not just simple content generators anymore, they're becoming sophisticated internet users.
What does that mean, like internet users?
They can navigate websites, mimic human browsing behavior, click on ads, fill out forms, and even pursue complex, drawn out long con schemes across vast numbers of accounts at the same time.
Wow. And when you layer on the sheer numbers cited, like that statistic from CyberArk that machine identities already outnumber human identities online by 45 to 1.
45 to 1, yeah. And that's just the existing non human activity. AI magnifies that scale enormously and makes that machine side much, much smarter and harder to spot.
The consequences are just huge then. Beyond just, eroding trust in online communication, there's a massive financial cost.
Absolutely. The reports from Deloitte and the European Banking Authority really highlight that generative AI is expected to significantly increase fraud risk in banking.
Mm.
We're talking potentially billions of dollars globally by 2027.
Billions. Okay, so this isn't just about annoying bots in comment sections. It translates directly into real financial harm for people, for businesses.
The ongoing debate on friction and seamless authentication, yeah, hitting the bottom line and potentially making online services more expensive or harder to use because everyone has to ramp up security friction.
And that's where we see our traditional security measures starting to, well, crumble against these sophisticated AI-driven attacks.
It feels like we have security in place, but it's just not catching these new threats effectively. Why are the current tools falling short?
Well, think about what they were built for. TAC-TCHAs, for instance. They were designed to distinguish humans from fairly basic bots.
That is true, but then I believe advanced AI can often solve them pretty easily now.
Right. And then you have strong identity verification, like the Know Your Customer or KYC processes banks use. Essentially for opening an account, sure.
But way too cumbersome and privacy invasive for most everyday online stuff. You don't want to upload your driver's license just to post a comment on a blog, right?
Exactly. And even the methods that seemed promising for remote verification, like asking someone to pose or move on a video call or using voice authentication.
Those are increasingly vulnerable to deepfake attacks too. I mean, just imagine if an AI can generate a video or audio feed of you following instructions in real time. Those checks subtly become kind of meaningless. And by the way, those are quite cheap.
Okay, but what about tools specifically designed to detect AI-generated content, like watermarking standards? I think C2PA is one, or metadata. Don't those help?
They're valuable, definitely. And initiatives like the Partnership on AI, working on synthetic content transparency, that's important work. But the source paper explains why they aren't enough to solve the broader problem.
Well, how so?
Because AI deception doesn't always involve creating new, fake content. And AI can simply find real, legitimate content, maybe publicly available photos or posts, and then use thousands of fake accounts to amplify them, spreading misinformation or harassment at scale. The content itself isn't synthetic.
Ah, I see. So the content is real, but the activity and the identities behind it are fake and AI-driven. The amplification is the problem.
Exactly. Or think about those AI agents we mentioned, the ones directly interacting with websites by mimicking clicks and inputs, like sophisticated bots trying to find security holes or carry out credential stuffing attacks.
Right. There's no AI-generated content there for a transparency tool to even detect.
Precisely. So, while content detection is definitely a piece of the puzzle, it doesn't address that fundamental issue of deceptive identities and activities online.
Okay, so if the fakes are getting better, scaling faster, and our current tools can't really keep up, it sounds like we need a fundamentally different approach.
And this is where the paper introduces the idea of personhood credentials, or PhCs.
PhCs.
That's the proposal. The core concept is about shifting the focus, instead of constantly trying to detect the AI or the fake.
Let's empower real people to prove they are real when it's necessary.
Exactly. And the key to this concept, as you hinted earlier, is proving you're a real person without necessarily revealing your actual name or identity to every online service you interact with.
How does that work?
Well, the idea leverage is a crucial point. Currently, even the most advanced AI struggles to credibly mimic a person offline or bypass state-of-the-art cryptography.
Okay.
So PhCs would be digital credentials. They'd allow a user to demonstrate to an online service that they meet the criteria of being a real unique person who has gone through some kind of verification process somewhere.
The aim, then, is to give individuals control away to signal trustworthiness in specific interactions if they choose to.
While also providing service providers with a new, hopefully privacy-preserving tool to distinguish humans from machines and reduce abuse by bad actors operating at scale.
The paper highlights two fundamental technical requirements, doesn't it? Things that any privacy-preserving PhC system must have to work safely.
That's right. These are critical first credential limits. The system absolutely has to ensure that the entity issuing the PhC, the issuer can only ever give one credential to any given eligible person.
One per person, full stop.
Full stop. This is vital to stop one attacker from just collecting multiple person identities. Of course, whether it would be decentralized or centralized, that is another question to debate.
Yeah.
So the idea is pretty simple, to cut off the ability to multiply identities at the source. Similar to our government's issuing ID cards, but an online one.
So no matter how many fake accounts or personas you try to create online, you can only be associated with, at most, one of these personhood credentials from a specific issuer.
Exactly. So followed by that, the second requirement is unlinkable pseudonymity.
What's that?
When a user interacts with different online services using their PhC, they use a unique service-specific identifier, basically a pseudonym for that site. Okay. Critically, their activity on Service A cannot be linked back to their activity on Service B by anyone, not the issuer, not the service providers, not even if the issuers and service providers try to collude.
And this is where the sophisticated cryptography comes in, right?
Yeah.
Using things like public key cryptography and zero-knowledge proofs.
Precisely. It allows you to mathematically prove two things. One, you possess a valid PhC, and two, that you haven't used this specific credential identity on this particular service before.
All without revealing which specific issuer gave you the credential or linking your activity across different websites.
Exactly. You prove you're a unique person, but you don't have to prove you're John Smith or Jane Doe to every website, and you don't reveal the government or bank or whoever vouched for you initially.
Okay, so if you can manage those two things, enforce one credential per person, and ensure this unlinkable privacy, what practical benefits do these PhCs actually offer online services and us, the users?
For service providers, it allows them to offer features or access on a genuine per-person basis, right? If a user misuses the service or violates the rules, the link between their account and their PhC pseudonym for that service can be revoked.
And because of the one per person limit, it becomes incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, for that user to just create a new fake identity and get back on the service with another PhC from the same issuer.
Exactly. It really addresses the sock puppet problem head on. Whether they're simple bots or sophisticated AI-powered fakes, it severely limits how many identities that one malicious actor can control on a single platform or even across multiple platforms that recognize the same type of PhC.
It also seems like it could enable more trustworthy interactions in situations where knowing you're dealing with a real human is important, but maybe knowing their full legal identity isn't necessary or even desirable.
Right? It is indeed pretty cool. The paper gives that example of a peer-to-peer marketplace that they call it Trade Hub, where maybe AI assistants are listing goods. Okay. With PhCs, a user could potentially filter to only see AI assistants that are explicitly backed by a real person, adding a layer of trust without needing the person's name or address.
Or think about online polls or digital governance processes, maybe Signing online petitions where you really want to ensure each participant is a unique, real person.
Prevent that automated flooding of input. Like the net neutrality comments example, the sources mentioned PhDs could offer a privacy-preserving way to enforce that one person, one vote, or one person, one voice rule.
All without requiring super invasive identity verification for every single interaction online.
Exactly. Sounds incredibly powerful for tackling deception at scale.
But something this significant clearly comes with major challenges. What are the big hurdles to actually building and deploying these PHC systems effectively?
Oh, there are definitely complex issues. The first big one is the issuance process itself. How does a trusted entity, whoever that is, issue a PhC securely, right? They need to authenticate the underlying identity first, likely linking it to something solid like a government ID to guarantee they're only issuing one credential per unique person and that the person isn't using, forged documents.
And authenticating IDs from hundreds of different countries with different formats, different security features.
Yeah, that won't be fun for anyone.
That sounds like a huge logistical nightmare.
It is. And then to enforce that one person gets one credential rule globally, or even just within a large region, some systems might propose using biometrics.
Like iris scans or fingerprints to ensure uniqueness.
Exactly right, which is effective for meeting that technical requirement, but it immediately brings up significant privacy and civil liberties concerns for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Using biometrics is always controversial.
The paper acknowledges these concerns. It stresses the need for things like transparent data handling, hashing, or encrypting biometric data securely. But there are technical risks too.
Like what?
Like ensuring the hardware used for the scans isn't tampered with, making the systems resistant to deep fake attacks on the biometrics themselves. Can AI fake a fingerprint scan convincingly? Maybe someday.
And many privacy advocates are, understandably, very cautious or just outright opposed to systems based on biometrics because of the potential for abuse and surveillance.
Definitely. Then there's the fundamental question of trust in issuers. Who gets to be an issuer? Governments, banks, big tech companies, other organizations.
Users have to trust that these entities will manage the minimal data they hold responsibly and won't misuse their powerful position.
Right.
Issuers would need incredible transparency about what data they collect, how it's handled. Yeah, ideally offer users ways to manage their credential, maybe even a right to be forgotten for the linking data once the credential isn't needed.
Having multiple competing issuers might help there, offering users choice and preventing over-reliance on just one single government or company.
They could mitigate some risks. Yeah. There's also a tension discussed between interoperability and risk. If a PhC is highly interoperable, works on lots of different websites and services, that's super convenient for the user.
Sure.
But if that single credential gets lost or compromised somehow, the risk is much higher because it could potentially affect all those linked services.
Right, the blast radius is bigger.
Yeah,
And we absolutely cannot forget access disparity. This seems huge.
it is. How do you possibly include the hundreds of millions of people worldwide who currently lack formal identification documents? Think about refugee populations, individuals in certain developing nations.
Tying PhCs strictly to traditional government IDs would just exclude vast numbers of people and create a massive digital divide.
Exactly. Any global system, or even a widely adopted one, must address this gap somehow. It's not just about cryptography and tech.
It's deeply intertwined with social equity, trust, global politics, and policy.
Precisely. The paper really emphasizes that moving forward requires proactive, broad consultation. We need the public governments, technologists, standards, bodies, civil society groups, all involved to navigate these complex issues responsibly.
And ensure any systems developed are equitable and actually protect people's rights, not undermine them.
Now, beyond the challenges of PhCs themselves, the sources also touch on how AI is being used in the fight against fraud and the sort of broader future outlook.
Right, because it's not just a tool for the bad guys. AI is also a powerful weapon for defense.
Definitely, the banking sector, as highlighted by Deloitte and the EBA, is investing heavily in AI and advanced data analytics. They're using it to detect complex fraudulent patterns that older traditional rules-based systems might just completely miss.
We see examples like JP Morgan Chase, MasterCard using AI for this.
Yeah, so it's essentially an ongoing AI arms race, isn't it? AI versus AI.
It really is. And successful defense requires constantly learning, adapting strategies, and investing not just in the cutting edge tech, but also in the skilled people who understand this evolving threat landscape.
And a key piece of that defense strategy that gets highlighted is collaboration and sharing information.
Absolutely. Financial institutions, regulators, they need ways to share threat intelligence and fraud data rapidly, almost in real time, to respond to these fast moving AI driven attacks.
The European banking author specifically recommends improving data sharing platforms, maybe using privacy preserving techniques like cryptographic hashes to share suspicious identifiers without revealing sensitive personal data broadly.
That makes sense. And concepts like zero trust security, which one of the banking sources discussed, become even more relevant.
That never trust, always verify principle, continuously authenticating every access request, even within a supposedly secure network, rather than assuming implicit trust anywhere.
It's like a layered approach makes sense. Maybe verifying the human element with something like PhCs, combined with continuous verification of interactions using other security models like zero trust.
Looking ahead, then, what are some of the broader directions or future steps the sources point towards?
Well, the paper suggests developing standardized methods to actually measure the prevalence and impact of deceptive accounts online. Quantifying the problem is key to really addressing it properly.
Yeah, you can't fix what you can't measure.
Also, establishing norms and standards specifically to govern the behavior of these increasingly capable agentic AI users operating on the internet. What are the rules for them?
And exploring how to leverage existing forms of identification, like our government issued IDs, and convert them into privacy, preserving digital credentials, things that could potentially serve as the basis for issuing PhCs.
Like the work NIST is doing on digital driver's licenses in the US, or initiatives in places like British Columbia, building on existing infrastructure but transforming it for the digital age, prioritizing privacy.
Yeah. And if PHC systems were to become widespread globally, the sources even ponder the potential need for international coordination, maybe even via some kind of supranational entity, similar to how international passports or travel documents are standardized.
Wow. Okay. So this deep dive has really laid out the, frankly, startling scale and sophistication of the AI powered deception problem online.
Yeah, it shows why our current tools are really struggling, and it presents these personhood credentials as a promising but definitely complex potential solution.
It offers a path, maybe, to restoring some trustworthiness online by empowering real people using cryptography that AI currently can't just bypass.
Or while aiming to protect privacy, which is key, but actually getting there requires overcoming these significant challenges around how the credentials are issued, verified, managed.
And ensuring they don't accidentally create new forms of exclusion or surveillance. That seems paramount.
Meanwhile, AI is also this crucial tool in fighting fraud on the other side, making collaboration and continuous adaptation absolutely essential.
So, as AI continues its relentless march, blurring these lines between human and machine in our online spaces every day, it leaves us with a pretty fundamental question to wrestle with, doesn't it?
It does.
How will we as a society collectively decide what level of proof of personhood is actually necessary for different kinds of online interactions? From commenting on a post to accessing critical services.
And perhaps even more importantly, how do we make sure that the solutions we build ultimately benefit everyone? While fiercely safeguarding fundamental rights like privacy and access for all.
That's definitely something we'll all need to think about as this digital world continues to evolve so rapidly around us.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We started with a simple but growing tension. As AI-powered identities become more realistic, scalable, and persuasive, our existing tools like CAPTCHAs, metadata, and even KYC are falling behind. The cost, trust, safety, and privacy in our everyday digital lives. Personhood credentials, or PhCs, offer one possible way forward, a model where you can prove you're real without revealing everything about yourself. One credential, strong privacy, minimal data. It's a fascinating blend of cryptography, digital identity, and ethics. But as we've explored, the road to making PhCs work is anything but simple. From the technical requirements and privacy concerns to global coordination and inclusion gaps, this isn't just a tech challenge, it's a societal one. So, where do we go from here? Well, maybe the real work starts not just with new tools, but with new conversations about who gets to be visible online, who gets to remain private, and what kinds of proof we want and need as we navigate this AI-shaped future. Thanks for staying with me through this episode. If you found this thought-provoking, make sure to follow Unbox Your Curiosity on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And of course, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious and stay real.